All right, so we're going to transition now to not really court culture. I think this is actually pod culture.
I think it's
our
Kate
podcast.
culture.
No, it's all of us.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're all in it. Okay, fine. Maybe it's a little Kate forward segment, I guess. Kate and Senator Kennedy forward content. So, okay, last week I testified before two subcommittees of the Senate Judiciary Committee on nationwide injunctions. And I wrote a long statement and spent some time preparing, but I honestly did not think, and probably should have, to prepare for being interrogated about this podcast. And Senators Kennedy and Blackburn are surprisingly super fans, did not know, but they are listeners, and so are their staffs, and they really wanted to talk strict scrutiny. So let's roll that tape.
You host a podcast, correct?
Yes, Senator.
And that is called Strict Scrutiny, correct?
All right, so Senator Blackburn wanted to know if I had called Justice Alito I think, raging misogynist, seemed to check out, so I tried to explain why I might have done that. But when Senator Kennedy confronted me about whether I'd called the justices evil, I thought that didn't sound like something I'd say, so I told him I really didn't think
No, you were
had.
like, I think that sounds like something my bitch co-host would say.
You're like, if I am being honest, I think I was
like a billion things Leah has said come to mind, right? And that could fit in the category.
Your staffers cannot tell our voices apart, Senator. I mean, I didn't say that, but I was thinking it. Okay, so fast forward to actually checking the transcript and the tape and this reel that they had put together.
Let's roll it.
On April 22nd, 2024, you said there are some members of the Supreme Court that are evil. Which justices were you talking about?
I'll take it your word, Senator. I don't recall using that word, but.
All right, here's what you said. You were talking about the majority opinion in Muldrow v. City of St. Louis. You said, quote, Justice Kagan, will she be able to control the opinion's future distortion by her evil colleagues? Probably not, end quote. Who were you talking about?
Sir, I'm very skeptical. If it's a transcription, it was probably a transcription error. I do not think I said.
No, you said it. Why don't you own up to it? Which you call some members of the Supreme Court evil. Now, which ones do you think are evil?
I would have to refresh my recollection. I've been very critical of some members of the Supreme Court.
You made that statement, aren't you?
I'm
You're an officer
Senator, it doesn't sound like something that
I would say. You know what I'm embarrassed at? That you're teaching our kids.
I don't refer to Supreme Court justices as evil in the classroom,
on
sir.
On your podcast, April 22nd, 2024.
Okay, well,
big as Dallas. And you're an officer of the court, and you're here advising us to be respectful to federal judges, and you say they're evil members of the United States Supreme Court? Gag me with a spoon.
Turns out I, in fact, did use the word evil, and in the immortal words of Dirty Dancing, when I'm wrong, I say I'm wrong.
But so were you that wrong, though? It was such an offhanded comment. I mean, the way he made it sound like you were saying they were stirring cauldrons and had pitchforks.
Yeah, that's not really. That's
we've
not
been
an
doing this
accurate
podcast for 6 years. Yes. If our listeners played a game at a live show with us where they threw out phrases and said, did you say this or not? I would get less than 50% correct because unless it's a recurring joke, I'm not going to remember it. You don't remember all the conversations you have with friends,
and that was also incredibly mild.
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't like you were saying Brett Kavanaugh writes BuzzFeed listicles instead of opinions. It was
I wish I'd been asked about that.
It's not like you just went on the Daily Show and called Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch dumb and said you basically had to write your book in language plain enough for them to understand, which I said, right? Yes,
that was a great moment. Yeah.
So basically Leah and I are never testifying before Congress. And I wanted to say maybe that's the point.
That is a serious, I think, kind of conversation to have about them making it intolerable to testify.
Let's go back. You aren't the only woman law professor who has gotten this kind of treatment from the Republican members of Congress when they have testified. Marianne Franks of GW got absolutely excoriated by John Kennedy as well, and she held her own, but she got a flood of terrible comments from absolutely misogynist MAGA folks who flooded her emails and social media. Jen Daskell also had a hard time in front of the committee. Now you have. Query, do any of the men's who testify before these committees get similar treatment?
I have thoughts about this because at the same hearing where Kate was testifying, one of the majority witnesses happens to be someone who has called for some Supreme Court justices to step down when they don't vote the way he wants, who claimed credit for the Supreme Court justices overruling Roe versus Wade because he blogged negatively about them when he thought they wouldn't do so. And at the hearing, wouldn't/couldn't answer where the money came from that endowed his chair. And all of that was totally fine. But like, you have the audacity, right, to criticize the court that they built to overrun our constitutional democracy. And so they want to shame you out of being able to appear at a Senate confirmation or like a Senate hearing.
They kept talking about how you're a law professor. Like, FYI, we do not assign this podcast to our students. It's a side thing, right?
Yeah. I did say I definitely don't refer to them as evil in the classroom. And that's absolutely true. It is a different mode of discourse. And I would think a committee that has a leading podcaster on it, Senator Cruz, would understand the medium.
Didn't he
didn't come to my defense.
Your husband? Didn't he
That was
weirdly
so
introduce
weird.
you with your husband? Like, what was that about?
It was apparently a huge breach of protocol. Like, you have a bio you give to the committee, and that's what they're supposed to use to introduce you. So the majority, the chair is not supposed to introduce the minority witness anyway, and they're definitely not supposed to editorialize about how you're married to a left-wing cable news host, which Cruz actually did when introducing me. And I felt my body kind of like shoot back 6 inches in my seat. I was so taken aback. And anyway, I guess they were just warming up.
Just for the gentleman from Cancun, Kate Shaw is a graduate of Brown University and Northwestern University's law school and a Supreme Court clerk and a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. Chris Hayes is a cable news
won
host.
awards for her scholarship.
Yes, but Chris Hayes was our roadie. Okay, that's what. Let's get it right.
We're not disparaging Chris Hayes, but it really was a little bit like you're only here because of your husband or something. Seemed to be what Cruz was trying to communicate, and I don't think it was offered in like a complimentary spirit. It was my pretty strong suspicion. Anyway,
justice for Snowflake and for Chris Hayes and for you.
On this, like, they are trying to scare people out of facilitating any kind of oversight, whether that is before Congress or outside of it. I mean, I feel like they felt like they had to come for you and the other talented women that have appeared before them because, like, watching the live hearing live, also seeing the public's reaction to it, like, you managed to keep your cool while spitting cold, hard facts about how their false narratives were indeed false. And so I wanted to play this clip so that everyone can hear it if you weren't tuning in.
What's the principle of when an injunction binding non-parties, which was never done in this country before the 1960s? And let's see the chart, the Trump chart, which was done really only once Trump came into office for the first time. You don't think this is a little bit anomalous? You don't think that's a little bit strange?
A very plausible explanation, Senator, you have to consider is that he is engaged in much more lawless activity than other presidents, right?
You don't think
you must
this was never
possibility.
used before the 1960s, and suddenly Democrat judges decide we love the nationwide injunction. And then when Biden comes to office, no, actually.
It's Republican appointees as well, Senator. And the 1960s is where some scholars sort of locate the beginning of this.
Can you identify one before then?
Mila Sahoni, who's another scholar of universal injunction, suggests 1913 is actually the first. There were others in the 20s.
The Republic endured for 150 years before there was a nationwide injunction.
Well, the federal government was doing a lot less until 100 years ago. So there's many things that have changed in the last 100 or the last 50 years.
So long as it is a Democrat president in office, then we should have no nationwide injunctions. If it's a Republican president, then this is absolutely fine, warranted, and called for. How can our system of law survive on those principles, Professor?
I think a system in which there are no meaningful constraints on the president is a very dangerous system
That's
of law.
Not what you thought when Joe Biden. That is not what you thought when Joe Biden was
every
president.
President
you
is
said that is
constrained
not what
and
you
must
said.
be.
You said it was a travesty for the principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law. You also said
the Supreme Court senator agreed
9-0 with me on
that.
You also said when Joe Biden.
Like, That was just incredible, and you were doing that.
I mean, the
throughout
only
hearing.
person who exhibited manhood in this moment was you.
more balls than all of the Republican members of that committee.
Is that what
combined.
a testicular
Oh, by the
confrontation
way,
looks like? Me and Josh Hawley.
yeah. But by the way, Republican senators, if I come before the committee, yeah, I said that, right? Like I said, Kate
Yeah.
has more balls than you.
That
Yes.
sounds like
Ask me about it. You should
Right, ask me about it.
Ask me
I'll
about the
defend
time.
it. Yeah. Ask me what I said about on my podcast.
I mean, yeah. I guess I just the point of this, I think, is to keep smart women from testifying, keep anyone who might be a dissenting voice from testifying, make it harder for the minority in both chambers to conduct oversight or participate in oversight, and underscore, I think, for everyone that your real job, Kate, is really to be at home having babies and collecting your Trump baby bonus or whatever nonsense policy they want to put out there. So,
And just to abstract up for 1 second on that, I think that's right. And I also think it's not just about testifying. I think it is disincentivizing speaking out. Like, I actually think it's part of that larger program to like ratchet up the costs of dissent. This is like one tiny instantiation of that, but that is the larger project. And fuck that.